Hello, my name is Cynthia, and I work at the Burlingame Public Library. And during our closure, we're going to be doing book talks or book suggestions, and we're going to be posting them onto YouTube once a week. So, what are you going to talk about this week, David?
I'm going to be talking about a charming book called The Keeper of Lost Things by Ruth Hogan. And I have it in audiobook form, which I downloaded on a great classic Overdrive app. We also have a newer version called Libby. It's the easiest thing to use, and I'm reading the book right on my smartphone.
Oh, delightful. And I'm going to be talking about The Dutch House by Ann Patchett. Both of these books are available through our Overdrive ebook service that you can access from the internet. So thank you for listening.
Hi, it's David from the Burlingame Public Library, and behind me is my trusty assistant Scout. Today's book talk is on The Keeper of Lost Things, a first novel by Ruth Hogan. I actually listened to it on an audiobook, and I am a true believer in audiobooks and ebooks. They are so easy to access. You can read them on your phones, your iPhones, your Androids. There's two applications. One's called Overdrive. The other newer version is called Libby. You can contact the Burlingame Public Library. We'll be happy to get you started on that. And the best thing about audiobooks, you'll never have to worry about where you left your reading glasses again. So The Keeper of Lost Things involves the story of two British women, one in the 1970s who joins as an assistant a book publisher known as Balmer. And she becomes his trusted assistant. And they grow very, very close, really companions. Balmer is pretty particular about the books that he publishes. They kind of have to touch his heart. His evil sister, Portia, tries to get several books published with him, but it appears that she's plagiarized other works and that her writing is terrible. So Eunice and Balmer always have a good laugh whenever Portia submits a book. But Portia is insistent, and she gets more aggressive, not only with her book, but in the way that she and Balmer approach dealing with their aging parents. And Eunice is very much involved with that as well. Laura joins as a housekeeper the home of Anthony, an elderly writer. He has a beautiful home. One of the highlights is a gorgeous rose garden in the back. Laura is recovering from a terrible marriage, trying in some ways to hide from the world and in other ways to get her life back together. Anthony has never truly recovered from the loss of his fiancée tragically many years ago, right before they were going to get married. One of the ways that he has coped with this is to set up a room where he accumulates all these items that he's found, these lost items, and he catalogs them, and then he writes stories about them. Stories about what might have happened and why these items were lost. Well, Laura settles in very quickly, and Anthony depends on her and trusts her, and then he passes away. Much to Laura's surprise, his solicitor informs her that she has inherited all of Anthony's worldly possessions and the house known as Padua. The only caveat is that Laura must promise to carry on Anthony's work with the lost things and do her very best to try and find the people who lost them and reunite them with their lost items. She's joined in this endeavor by a handsome gardener named Freddie and a young woman with a developmental disability who has a great knack for making lovely cups of tea and has very strong insights that sometimes escape both Laura and Freddie. So they set about setting up a website and cataloging the items, and very soon they're actually getting some inquiries. Well, the reader will soon see that these two stories are interconnected, and I really recommend this book. It is a delightful read about love, longing, and hope. And if you read it in the morning, you won't need to add an extra teaspoon of sugar to your lovely cup of tea.
So today, I wanted to talk to you about The Dutch House by Ann Patchett. Isn't that cover gorgeous? I thought originally that it was a classic painting, but it turns out that Ann Patchett had that commissioned by an American painter named Noah Saterstrom. I just think it's really lovely. And it features Maeve Conroy, one of the main characters in the book. So Maeve lives in a large mansion with her father, Cyril, and her younger brother, Danny. Their mother has taken off for India. She leaves the family when Danny is about 4 years old. And Maeve becomes his surrogate mom and his fiercest protector. So they do grow up in this gorgeous house called the Dutch House in the neighborhood because it was built in the 1920s by Dutch immigrants. And it is an example of pre-World War II luxury. It has a ballroom on the 3rd floor and a pool out back. And when Cyril buys the house in the 1950s, he buys it lock, stock, and barrel. All the furniture, the plates, all the paintings, everything. So it's quite the showplace. So when Danny is about 10 and Maeve is 17 and going off to college, enter the evil stepmother, Andrea. And Andrea lives up to her name. She seems more interested in the house than she does in her new stepchildren. She has 2 children of her own as well. And Maeve and Andrea knock heads almost immediately. Both of them have quite strong personalities. And this actually ultimately does matter because Danny and Maeve's father dies unexpectedly when Danny's still only about 14 years old. Andrea promptly sells off the construction company that Danny had hoped to inherit or expected to inherit and kicks Danny out of the house, telling Maeve, he's your problem, you need to take care of him. And Maeve steps up, like the great sister that she is, and she figures it out, and Danny helps her figure it out. They're quite close, these 2 siblings. And the rest of the novel, it covers quite a few decades, from the 1950s through the 90s, follows these 2 siblings as they make their way in the world. The book, covers some big themes about resiliency and surviving a bad childhood or childhood tragedies, as well as the role of women. There's a lot of women in this book, and the different roles that they play, wife, mother, sister, daughter, the kinds of career options available to women at this time, being a teacher, being a servant, sort of some limited, they have less options than necessarily Danny has. As well as how people create family. When you don't have very many blood relatives left, how do you create a family from your community and help yourself thrive? So I do highly recommend The Dutch House by Ann Patchett. And you can get this book on Overdrive, which is our ebook service. You can download it as a book to read or as an audiobook. So thank you so much for your time.